Well, I think we're live now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Solid World. We'll start in about 5 minutes and just let people come in the door and get time to settle in, get their coffees and teas ready, and then we will make a start. How's the poster prep going for you for the Solid Symposium, Christoph?
Oh, poster prep. Yeah. So on my side, we hope to have a poster. So the reviews are on their way. I'd say as the organizer of that session. But I still need to prepare our poster, or rather, the one thing that I want to present with my colleague. Probably delegating that to the colleague. To be
That's a smart
honest.
call. That's a smart call.
Uh,
I
no.
missed out entirely on my poster paper opportunity. Someone in my department was writing a poster paper the night before. They decided to go, "Oh yeah, Jesse, do you want to co-author on it?" And I went, Yes, but I read this 3 days too late." It would have been nice to know about it earlier. What's the topic of your contribution
Uh,
or your colleague's contribution?
so we are working on data discovery with DCAT
Nice.
and Solid, so that will be interesting. Um, but yeah, I think like just spoilering
Spoiler
a
alert.
little bit. Yeah, spoiler alert for the Solid Symposium in London. There will be a wide range of topics actually in the posters. I'm quite happy
Nice.
as far as I can see right now. Uh, so yeah, that will be a nice overview actually.
We had a fair number of, what was it, like 40, 50 submissions? I didn't
Yeah, I
quite.
mean it's for the posters. It's a good number. I think 20 submissions total so far. That's like also a decent number that it's not like super
Overwhelming.
super big, where you get lost after the fifth poster you look at. But you can kind of take it all in. So I think that's a good number in the end. We'll see how the reviews and feedbacks loops go on the poster submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And are you all
Oh,
booked
there.
and ready to travel? I know I've been speaking to Ross about all the pre-events that he wants to get ready, and I've been getting texts with micro breweries that he wants to pre-book out for the Wednesday night when everyone's arriving. So are you going to be there in time for the microbrewery experience that's being prepared?
I will. I'll probably arrive Monday
Nice.
afternoon or evening, and visit a friend. So
Sounds good.
that will be nice. But speaking of London, where's everybody from? I see people in the chat already. I see York, London.
Yeah,
Uh,
here we're very central London. We're in King's Place in right next to the St Pancras station, so that everyone can come in quite quickly. What about yourself, Christoph?
so I'm based in Karlsruhe, Germany, of course, and yeah, currently weather is present. That's good. It's not no weather. I don't know how the weather is with you.
I'm never happy with the UK weather. I'm Australian, so I'm always just, where's the sun? It's just there's just a lot of rain and no sunshine. I never get the
Yeah,
vitamin D levels that I used to have.
it's on vacation in Australia. Um,
Yeah, this is true.
so we
Where else
have
have we gone?
Netherlands, Alberta, Canada, Utrecht, Oxford,
Oxford, London, York,
Florida,
audio
USA,
issues for some people, Great Plains, US, Rotterdam, San Fran.
Istanbul,
Nice.
Ghent.
Well, I think we can probably about make a start. I think we've got most of the crowd in here now, and it's four past, so I think close enough to five past. So we'll kick off for today. Um, so before we begin, we just want to let you know that the webinar is going to be recorded and it'll be posted to the social media channels of the ODI and our newsletter. So if you're needing to drop off early, don't worry, you can access this later. And we will be doing a Q&A at the very end where you'll be able to ask myself, Ollie, who will be joining very shortly, and Christoph any questions that you may have. Feel free to add those questions to the chat as we go along, and we can come back and look at the questions at the end and answer any questions. If we don't have time to answer them all, then we can answer them on Slack and the other communication channels that we have around Solid. So do not worry on that front. I'm your host, Jesse. I'll be hosting Solid Vault for the last time today, and very shortly I'll show you who we're going to be handing over to. And for today's Solid World, I'll be starting with updates from the practitioners group and from the linked web storage group. I'll hand over to Christoph to give his updates from the community group side. And then we'll be having a special Solid World where I and Ollie Beige will be talking you through the ODI Solid roadmap for 2026. I'm just checking my watch because I'm seeing a message from Ollie saying he's having serious network issues. So hopefully he will be on in time for that part of the presentation. And then we'll be hearing from Ollie about CDMC, which is a standard that he's got to mass adoption in the cloud and financial service sector. And he'll talk through how we're applying some of the same strategies to the Solid 2026 roadmap that the ODI has as he applied to CDMC. And then we'll go into our Q&As. So before we go any further, I would like to make an introduction of the brand new community manager that the ODI has. He started on Monday, but he's by no means a newbie to Solid. He's worked on Solid for many years. It's Roberto, and I'll hand over to Roberto to tell you a little bit about himself.
Hi, folks. I'm Roberto. I'll keep this a bit brief. Like Jesse mentioned, I am the new community manager coming into the ODI. Just started, and like he mentioned, I've been around Solid for a good amount of time now. About 3 years working full-time on Solid before this role through Inrupt. And a bit about myself. Let's see. I'm from Brazil, so like your previous host, Jesse, I'm also deficient in vitamin D, living up here. I'm based in Brussels these days, though I'll be up and down from London a few times. What else is there to say? My background's in computer science, international relations, and governance of technologies as a whole. I'm a saxophone player. I've been told to tell you that. Apparently, that's interesting. Just like your previous host, so pretty bad sax quartet coming up. Beyond that, one-sided, we'll say. Jesse's good. Beyond that, I'm really looking forward to meeting you all, really looking forward to working to help with the projects we have going on at the community now. I'll be putting some things in to our communication channels early next week, just opening some places. I'd love to speak to as many people as we can, so I'll just put my calendar up. Come by if you have a minute, talk my ear off. That's what I'm here for. And yeah, very excited to be joining. I'll be very excited to be emceeing this call next time we do it. I think it'll be April time. And yeah, I'll leave you to it. Handing you back over to Jesse now.
Perfect. Great to have you on board, Roberto, and very much looking forward to the future Solid World with Roberto as a host. And I am sure everyone that's watching is going to get to know Roberto in no time. He'll be in the community group calls, he'll be in the practitioners group calls, he'll be available if you have any questions about Solid. So please, please, please do get in touch with him. Moving on to updates. We're changing format slightly. You'll have seen in previous Solid Worlds, we had the practitioners group and the linked web storage group with their own representatives. What we're going to be doing from now on, just to keep things a bit faster, is have one of the groups give a live update. This time round, it's Christoph. And then the other two groups will have an update from the host, taking you through what those groups have been up to. The practitioners group has been busy with different pieces of work, primarily around food in the last few months. They've been firstly doing a review of content standards and understanding how content moderation laws are impeding civil rights, and also talking about the impact of content moderation on platforms like Solid and similar ecosystems to Mastodon. They've been working on food security and having presentations from people like Tom Bird, who talked about the Baltimore Food Project, as well as Luke Dowry, who talked about the food distribution app that he's been working on. ODI has also been working with the practitioners group to set up coding sessions so that the practitioners can be more hands-on and we as the ODI can learn some of the lessons that the practitioners have learned building their applications. Those coding sessions are run about monthly. So if you want to get your hands on with Solid and have a place to build with Solid with some people to guide you, then the practitioners group is a great place to be doing that. The next meeting of the practitioners group is tomorrow, February 19th. The link to join that practitioners group you can see on the screen, and hopefully Joe will also put in the chat for you. It's meet.jit.si/solid practitioners. And there'll be two main topics for tomorrow. Firstly is adoption support for Solid 2026, i.e. how the ODI and other organizations can work with them and have better adoption materials in place for the roadmap that we'll talk about later in this call. And there will also be a presentation from Tom Bird about food insecurity. The Linked Web Storage group has also been very busy working on their latest specifications. The work items that are nearing completion are around the CRUD operations for create, read, and update. And also authentication and authorization are now nearing completion as spec documents. In progress within the group are work items including, but not limited to, access requests, container operations, and what is not listed here, notifications. The group's aiming to have a first set of documents completed by March, so that those can start to go out for review to wider audiences, and so that we can start to work out compatibility with things like the current Solid specifications. If you're interested in linked web storage and want to get involved, either because you're a W3C member or because you make for a good invited expert status, please do get involved. The link to learn more about the group is in the slide here and hopefully also in the chat soon for you as well. With that, I'm going to hand over to Christoph to give the community group updates. And I am going to drop off screen for a second so we can get Ollie on the call for you very shortly. Over to you, Christoph.
Thanks, Jesse. So welcome to the webinar, to this update on the Solid community group. On behalf of the chairs, I'm Christoph. I'm one of the newly appointed chairs together with Theo, the third one you see on the right-hand side, and our chair who's been around longer is Pavlik. The community group has currently about 300 participants, though not everybody is participating all the time. But what is the community group really? Jesse, if you can. Yes, thank you. So what is the community group really? It is a volunteer-centric coalition of the willing. Nobody is forced to attend, to join, or leave the group. It's a group made of hobbyists, researchers, developers, practitioners, and all sorts of fabulous people. And they all come together to define the open standards for a re-decentralized web. That's the overall goal and mission. And to achieve that, we write the specifications and build the tools. The community's momentum entirely depends on the energy and the active consensus of individual members. So it is not a top-down group where the chairs basically tell the way to go and everybody needs to adhere, but it's a coalition of the willing. What gets done, gets done. The chairs basically lead the group the right way or guide the group. So how can you engage with the group, Jesse? To get in touch with the community, there is the public mailing list. You're not reaching the chairs alone, you're reaching all those subscribed to the mailing list if you shoot an email over that one. You can visit the weekly meetings Wednesdays at 14 o'clock UTC, or come to the Matrix chat room on the Solid specifications app development practitioners is also on Matrix. So there are various rooms that you can engage with the community. And finally, the last update here on the organizational part is the chair election. As said earlier, I'm one of the newly appointed chairs together with Theo. We would like to thank Mikhail and Hadrian for the services they provided over the last 2 years, serving as chairs before us. So very much thank you. The next election will be then in December, where Pavlik's chair will be filled again. All right, so much for organizational issues. What is the community group working on? We have so-called work items. Those are recognized work items and officially adopted by the group. Things that the group works on, like the Solid protocol, the core specification that we are working on, the WebID profile, Solid OpenID Connect, web access control and access control policies, and Solid application interoperability, and more and more. And you can learn more about these under Solid project/TR. So this is what we have on our plate already, but because it's a coalition of the willing and volunteers have fun ideas all the time, there are also proposed work items. And we had a call earlier this year in January to propose work items to the group to see what the people are actually interested in. And this includes access requests and grants, data discovery, how to deal with organizations, groups, teams, and roles with Solid. Then also deeply technical topics on advanced authentication, web authentication, FATCM, SSI, and more. There was also interest expressed in getting better developer tooling and documenting best practices around verifiable credentials, AI, container usage, and so on. And many more. 22 items were proposed in total. If you want to see which ones in particular, there is the link in the chat to the issue 54. So feel free to browse through that after the call. And maybe if you're interested, engage in conversation there. Speaking of engaging, next slide, please. What are the hot topics on the road ahead? We identify them based on engagement. It's a coalition of the willing, those who are willing to do the work. These are the topics that progress. And these have been the social profiles, considerations around how to structure a social profile. Some things should be public, some should be protected. Then standardizing access requests and grants. You already heard that topic by Jesse on the LWS working group has it also on its radar. Then a long-standing topic is ActivityPub for Solid, where there are many individuals involved in both communities. And finally, no presentation without AI these days. So there is also interest in how to use Solid, with AI being a very broad term here. So these are really topics of interest right now, focus topics for us where we want to drive engagement, keep momentum, and bring people together to discuss, but not only to discuss, but also to write specifications, write documentation, write the code that actually puts this into practice. This is what we are, as chairs, are driving. But we also have a long list of to-dos. We can't always go for the new shiny things, but we also need to maintain what we have already there. And this includes to continue to mature the current specifications in 2026, the Solid protocol, Solid OIDC, web access control. And this is associated with improving the test suite, incorporating implementers' feedback, creating and improving guides, tutorials, tooling, and so on. And finally, to support new community members, just like you maybe, when you visit the Gitter or the next community meeting. Jesse. So what will be done in the next 6 months? as I repeat myself over and over, the community's engagement and momentum depends entirely on the energy and active consensus of the individual members. We as chairs, we can stifle that engagement, we can cheer you on, but in the end, if you're excited about a topic, you're the one who brings it forward and who has to cheer for it as well. So if you're interested in any of those topics or other topics around the open web, the re-decentralized web, get in touch and we'll see how we can support you there. And with that, I would like to hand over to Jesse to talk more about how the ODI sees the current state of specifications in 2026.
Thank you so much, Christoph, and thank you for the wonderful overview of what the community group has been up to. So, we would now like to present the roadmap that ODI has started to put together for Solid for 2026. And as I do that, I would like to introduce Ollie Beige, who has finally managed to fight through his network issues to make it with us today. Ollie's been a technical advisor for the ODI for the last couple of months. Prior to that, he was working in the financial services sector for some 25 years, I believe, the last 5 at the London Stock Exchange, where the London Stock Exchange was one of our partners with the ODI to help adopt Solid, and they were starting to implement Solid. So he's seen Solid from the LSEG side, and he's now here to help us with the adoption strategy. We'll learn more later about things like CDMC, which have helped influence the roadmap, at least as far as lessons learned for adoption strategies. Ollie, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit further before we go on?
Yeah, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. Sorry for the delay at the start there. As Jesse said, I've spent most of my career in financial technology roles, mostly around data. So I did a computer science degree at Cambridge, joined the grad program at a big US investment bank called Morgan Stanley, was a C++ developer for about 10 years, and then I got into data in the mid-noughties and built successively larger data platforms inside that bank. Ended up with a very fancy title of Distinguished Engineer in the Center of Excellence for Data, but basically running a small data advisory group inside that bank. And then a data company came knocking at my door and said, "Hey, you're a data guy. You'd like to work at a data company?" And it's like, yes, I would actually. So I went and spent 5 years at the London Stock Exchange Group, which is the world's largest financial data company, where I was the chief data architect. But I also set up an industry partners team there as in the CTO function, and LSEG and its predecessor companies, including Reuters, have been a strong partner of the ODI since its founding and developed important pieces of technology like PermID together. And I spent the last year in partnership with Jesse and Louise and the team at the ODI looking at ways to encourage Solid to be adopted by the financial services industry. That was after running into Tim at a conference that we were organising at LSEG. So at the end of last year, I left LSEG for a different opportunity, but Louise came up to me at the Christmas party and said, "Oh, if you've got some spare time, then we could do some help on the Solid roadmap." And I've been enthusiastically getting involved since then, hoping to bring some of my experience of enterprise adoption of emerging technology to the Solid project, and also use some of my network and experience. That experience we'll go into a little bit later, but I did lead a successful industry standards effort around cloud data management called CDMC in 2020 and 2021. So I've I've stolen all of the things that worked well about that initiative and applied them to Solid, and some of the lessons learned about things that maybe didn't work so well, and we've applied those as well. We put that together, Jesse and I, and a very large community of people, including the community group and lots of other stakeholders, have been working on this over the last 6 weeks, and we'd love to take you through what we think the priorities for Solid in 2026 are at the ODI. And we would also love your feedback. So if you look at this and go, "Oh, I don't think that's going to work," please do tell us. Please tell me. Please tell Jesse. Please tell Roberto.
Excellent. Thank you for the introduction. Shall I hand it back to you to take us through the roadmap?
Yes. So job number one when I joined the ODI back in January was can we have a roadmap, please, of what the plans are for this year? There's a 3-phase approach to this. and it's all about adoption. So Solid is now a mature set of technology standards, and it has pockets of adoption in various different use case areas. But what we really wanted to do was firstly get the word out that Solid exists and it's useful for a particular set of use cases, and get feedback from actual end users who are trying to adopt it on what's easy and what's hard. So this entire roadmap is about assembling those groups of end users, people who don't necessarily work on Solid every day, and getting a feedback channel to them. First part is putting the actual roadmap together. That's mostly done now. We're in the feedback zone during February, where we're showing people what we think the roadmap ought to be, but we're looking for feedback from people. And in the meantime, we want to create a baseline to compare against. So as we go into each of these different industry groups, and you'll see them down the bottom in the persona adoption section, there needs to be a consistent set of artifacts that they are trying to adopt or trying to use, and can give feedback against, saying, it's great that you've got these features, but I really need this kind of IAM integration for my particular use case, or I really need multiple enterprise grade options for deploying Solid Pod services, or I need something else. We don't know what those crunch points are going to be, or the pain points are, but we do know we need a baseline to work off. So we've proposed putting together what we initially called Solid 1.0, but the community group pointed out that maybe we're not quite as mature as a 1.0 release. That would be something that maybe we'd aim for by the end of this year. So instead, we're adopting the ISO kind of naming convention of distributions of a set of artifacts, standards and substandards, and reference architecture documents and training material that are all known consistent with each other. At Tim's recommendation, we're calling that Solid 26. And the idea is to adopt a calendar versioning kind of scheme here, so that people have, particularly enterprise people, need to know that it's not going to change under their feet as they try to do adoption. So you might see a Solid 27 or a Solid 28 as well, but there needs to be a consistent baseline here. It also shows that we're now moving Solid from a primarily research driven with occasional enterprise adoption project into a living standard, a rolling platform, something that's going to be continuously developed and released out into the wider world. If you hit the next slide, Jesse, then we can get into I guess the most important part of the roadmap, which is getting feedback from individual persona groups. Now, the ODI is relatively small as an organization, so it can't get all this feedback itself. We're proposing that in order to get that feedback and prioritize it, that we would work with a set of partners. There are some suggested partners here, but these are definitely not the only ones that we want to work with. They're just people who have already got some reason to be involved with Solid from their previous experience. We would expect there to be a range of different partner organizations. For example, I had a really good experience building standards with the Enterprise Data Management Association. So I'm at the moment setting up a collaboration between Jesse and the product management team at the EDMA. There'll be similar collaborations we'll have with the various different Solid research groups around the world. We've also got a number of social good funded opportunities from organizations like Google and Elevate Great. And there are some long-standing kind of enterprise relationships. So Inrupt and LSEG both spent a bit of time with various different government, financial services and medical use cases, looking at getting Solid to be integrated into other people's workflows and product areas. Once we've got those groups assembled, if you hit the next slide, we'll want to engage with those groups. So in the roadmap terms, as we approach the release of Solid 26, and we're aiming to get that really all those materials to be ready by the time we get to the Solid Symposium at the end of April, we want to also put some kind of customized artifacts and documents and training materials, onboarding materials together for the specific persona groups. So that means not just the specs, but maybe reference architectures, which are important in the enterprise setting, or self-service tools, which might be important for individuals who want to get involved, or research teams. Or it might be something else for a particular persona. One of the things we've been focused on in the last couple of weeks is what kind of demos people would like to see if they're not familiar with Solid already. So there's the opportunity over the next 2 months to build out a small number of nice looking, easy to understand, quick demo examples of how Solid is used in, for example, visiting websites and having a personalized experience, or using large language models and having a personalized agent acting on your behalf. There are some enterprise use cases as well that LSEG was driving around the protection of chat information across very, very sensitive conversations, and that might be applicable to the medical space as well. And we'll start to build those out. We will share. If those examples turn out to be really good demos, we will come back to Solid World and show you what we've been up to. And they'll all be in the public domain so that you can share them amongst your own community and drive interest in people who've maybe heard about Solid or read the chapter in the book that Tim's recently published, but don't know how they can get involved themselves. The other thing it's worth saying about the persona groups is there's a role for lots of different types of people here. So for emerging technology to be adopted, you need people who've got business analysis skills, communication skills, not just kind of technical hands-on skills, but the kinds of skills that you need when you get into an adoption environment. People who understand the domain really well and can give feedback about what's easy and what's hard. And we want that feedback so that we can, in the second half of the year, take that back to the core Solid team, the ones who've just released Solid 26, and go through a kind of prioritization process of, look, 5 persona groups all ask for this particular extra feature to be added. Is that something that we want to add into the specs themselves? Or maybe we delegate it to a partner organization who want to extend Solid or build some software or part of the specification on top of it. That will mean that future releases of the Solid specifications can support a much wider range of adoption use cases, and there'll be the examples to make that easy for people. I think that is everything from the roadmap point of view. I can't remember. Yes.
Yes. So would you like to now transition into your CDMC presentation and talk us through the lessons that have been learned from CDMC and where they fit into this roadmap?
Yes, let me try and share my screen.
Yes.
And you will have to let me do that, I believe. Okay.
I have stopped sharing the ODI account. May need to let you in.
There we go. And then I'm going to, can I share my screen? Yes. And I've got this.
Excellent.
And does my slide now show on the screen?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I can no longer see the Zoom console, so if people have questions or if we need to stop for any reason, do please interrupt me. So a little bit of background on standards adoption lessons learned that I've taken from the past. So as I mentioned before, I spent 21 years at Morgan Stanley, and towards the end of my time, part of my role was kind of doing quality control on cloud migration projects, amongst other sets of responsibilities. So I was the guy with the clipboard with 150 different projects in the queue wanting to all adopt cloud technology. And this was in the kind of 2017, 2018 time, where the controls on cloud for very sensitive data were not very mature. One moment, there's something going on with my screen. There we go. The controls on cloud weren't very mature. So it was easy for people to make mistakes, and there were some very high-profile data leakage problems that the finance industry had. So Morgan Stanley at the time had a very mature control environment for sensitive data in its on-premise environment, so in data stored in its own data centers, and it asked the cloud companies that it was working with to implement the exact same set of 14 key controls for data on cloud, and they went, haha, you don't spend very much money, we're not doing that. And they went, oh, but we can't put anything important on cloud without these controls in place. And so the cloud company said, well, sorry. Morgan Stanley suggested at the time that they would assemble a working group with all of the world's systemically important banks in it, who all had this problem, and they would work together to write down the 14 things they needed the cloud companies to do, effectively gang up on them and say, we really, really want you to implement these features. And that did work. So we assembled a working group, 17 systemically important banks, and what ended up being 150 other organizations, and a very good set of engineering representation from Amazon and Microsoft and Google and IBM and Snowflake and lots of other kind of medium-sized and emerging tech companies as well, who were deep specialists in areas of data management. And we published a specification after working together for 45,000 SME hours in 2021. And that was steadily adopted by various cloud service providers over the couple of years following it. And you can see some green ticks there. I've since taken that CDMC specification. I was chair of the working group along with someone called Richard Perris from Morgan Stanley at the time. We've taken that specification and adapted it for AI risk management and controls. And the framework I'm about to show you is the kind of next generation of CDMC, which is for AI data and analytics control. So you might find this interesting if you're working with AI in an enterprise concept. This might be the framework that you could use to bring together your model control team and your data governance team. So what is the CDMC framework? It's a set of data controls. In the original cloud data management capabilities framework, there were 14 of them. For the AI and analytics controls, there are 15 because performance evaluation frameworks for models are significantly different than data quality frameworks. So we've given them their own capability area. But to do a very quick overview of the types of controls here, rule number one is catalog all your data. Make sure you've got all of your data sets discovered. You may not know what they are, but you need to know that they exist, how much data is there and who created it. Run a classifier over it to try and find out how sensitive that data is. And for anything that is sensitive, turn on entitlements and access control, security, privacy impact assessments and ethical impact assessments. Make sure you've got a way of retaining that data for the right amount of time. You have owners assigned to every one of the items in the data catalog, and the owner can assign the authoritative source and authorized redistributors for that data, which is an important way of ensuring that the quality of the source is continually available downstream. Also, the owner can define data sovereignty and cross-border movement controls. If you've got a big global organization, there are certain citizen data sets that can't leave a certain country or shouldn't go into a certain country. And also putting data quality fit for purpose checks and their metrics in the catalog is a good idea so that the owner can see when downstream consumers of that data are having problems with it, and putting the cost metrics and environmental impact and sustainability metrics on the data also allows the owner to see how much money is being spent on maybe licensing that data, running compute on it, the storage costs and so on. For the AI space, doing active use case governance for your data assets is very important because you want to understand when models drift outside of their performance evaluation framework envelopes. So knowing what the purpose of an AI use case is, the intended outcome, and having a way to measure whether you're actually achieving that outcome so that you can see when you introduce new model versions or different types of training data, whether you get different outcomes. There are also some rules in the EU AI Act around individual impacts that need to be measured and known by those governance groups. And there's a new dimension of a risk taxonomy. So if you're in financial services, you'll know they're very heavily involved in risk management and making sure that they don't take too much risk. So we're bringing together here the risk vocabulary from model control frameworks and data governance frameworks. And then finally, on the audit trail side, in the early versions of CDMC, it gave some guidelines around lineage tracing, logical and physical lineage. In the AI space, we're also looking at the versions of training data, the reproducibility of results, and so on. And there's a talk I've given a couple of times, and I think the replays are online, of me doing a lineage trace of all of the training data in the open language model from AI2, so Olmo 2, which is trained on the internet, in quote marks, but it's really 9.5 petabytes of data from the Common Crawl, and it just shows you what's inside the Common Crawl and how they use it for pre-training. So you might be interested in that. If you're interested in any of these things, you can go to beige.co.uk, and there are links to these slides and some webcasts and materials and the types of more detailed material. If this looks like it's relevant to your day job, there's a bit more detail on what the key controls are. There's a scoreable framework you can use to assess how mature your organization is as well. So I think that's the end of my little sidebar. I guess the lesson we took from CDMC that's applying to Solid is, here was a set of capabilities that looked, when Morgan Stanley donated its control framework into the open source, looked like they were complete, and they certainly were working inside Morgan Stanley. But when we got feedback from 14 other systemically important banks and another 100 odd other organizations on how to actually implement the framework, we ended up with a much higher quality product, which was much more broadly adopted by the different major technology platforms in the world. So I'm trying to replicate that feedback process for Solid and treat it much more as a product that people should be adopting to solve a particular privacy problem that the world faces. So that's the end of my talk. Jesse, are you still there? I can't actually see now.
Thank you so much, Ollie. That was a very good quick fire version of the CDMC presentation. I've seen an hour-long version of this, and it's just as interesting. I did see a question in the chat on that topic, which is, are there slides available, please and thanks?
Yes, those slides they're on beta.co.uk. I'm sure we'll also put them in wherever we put the recording of this session as well. And may even, if I get really organized, be able to put them in the chat before the end of this meeting, and so you can go straight there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Well, I'll kick off with a question for you and then hand over to a few questions for Christoph, which is, well, we've got the way that we're applying lessons from the adoption strategy of CDMC to Solid, but we also in the background have gone and applied CDMC to Solid as a framework for does Solid conform to these cloud data management controls? What are the key kind of risks and opportunities that you see for Solid when you evaluate Solid's specification against the framework?
Cool. That's to me, I see.
Yes.
Yes. So we went through that exercise and ended up with a set of scores on a maturity scale of the kinds of features that enterprise users tend to want to see in their data platform. So if you look at Solid in one way, it's got many of the properties of a data platform, and the types of very sensitive data that you would want to put in there are very similar to the types of extremely sensitive data that a large financial services or a medical company or an insurance company would want to put in their own internal data platform. So you'd want to know what data you've got in there, have a good idea of who's got entitlements to it, and what they're planning to do with it. And that's exactly the set of features that we've also seen be important to end users in Solid in some of the demos. So I think it's helped us prioritize how an end user experience of having true sovereignty over your data, the kinds of features you need in there. Now, not all of them are entirely relevant. So retention requirements are kind of a bit of a legal requirement, and you may not do lineage tracing on all the data because there's quite a lot of technical detail. But it gives us a sense of the kind of core end user functionality in both CDMC and Solid, and the types of things that we're likely to see when we get to that enterprise persona adoption use case. So it gives us a bit of a look ahead, but I am a firm believer in getting actual feedback from real end users who are really trying to use Solid right now, rather than trying to guess what they might need.
Amazing. Thank you, Ollie. Christoph, over to you for a question. You mentioned that you're looking to onboard new participants into the Solid CG. Is there a place for people who aren't experienced spec writers? If so, how can they get engaged and contribute?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. As mentioned, I think the best and lowest barrier entry is the Matrix channel. Just hop on the Matrix channel if you want to engage, if you have any questions, and start by just asking people, is this the right place to ask the question that I have? Look, this is here, and people will happily jump on that question, either answer it directly or point you to the to a better room to raise that question. Could be the practitioners group if it's really about putting it into deployment. If it's related to app development, there is a Gitter room for that. And it's really we try to achieve a welcoming and diverse group where everybody is welcome to ask questions, to learn. You're not expected to know everything. Nobody does that. So it's really also a place to get the know to know the technology and to see what it can do, and to uh, advocate for the needs that you have for that technology.
Excellent. And I saw Theo has put a link to the Matrix in the chat as well. So if anyone wants to jump on, they can do so. I've got a question now for both Christoph and Ollie, which is from Emma. What are the methods currently being used to get feedback from implementers and users of Solid? And I'll add to that question, what's that going to look like in 6 months? So maybe Christoph, do you want to start with the now?
Yes. So from the community perspective, it's really there is, I'd say, no good active mechanism for us chairs to receive feedback. So there's no survey that we send out every week or something. It's really more like the feedback that we usually receive is in the GitHub issues if something doesn't work or something doesn't fit the requirements. Then it's where the implementers or the practitioners really raise their hand and say, hey, this doesn't work. And this is what we are particularly after, is really getting the feedback from the crowd who's doing it. To get to know the pain points. That is what is currently being done, but it depends on the engagement of the practitioners. So we're relying on them to approach us, and I don't know if Ollie has a better way of doing that and supporting us with that in a more active manner.
Yeah, this will be a focus area for us. And I would say it will be different for each persona group. So I've got plenty of experience of how kind of enterprise practitioners look at emerging technology and give feedback, usually through industry working groups. And I've been involved in the open source community as part of the Finos group and the Linux Foundation, the CNCF group, and as part of OMG's dprod working group as well. And they each had their own appropriate feedback collecting mechanism for the task they were trying to achieve at the time. So it might be that you've got a very wide group of people who are all trying to adopt a particular artifact and you want to get written feedback so that you can triage through it and summarize it back. Or it might be you want to be hands-on with people in a working group every week and maybe spend an hour with them listening, writing down collective group feedback. And that's certainly that ADAC group I talked about earlier in the ADAC framework. We spend an hour every Monday, 3 till 4, actively inviting new people, usually chief data officers or people building AI governance platforms in, effectively interviewing them, showing them the framework and getting like feedback there, and then adjusting framework on the fly to make it more relevant for them. And that works very well as well. So it's a bit horses for courses, and we'll take advice from each of our partner organizations in each of these different persona areas as to what the right way to be effective with feedback is, and to always, because this is the ODI, always do it in an open and transparent way. So everybody will be able to see the feedback that's being given, what stage it's at, is it being considered as being added or prioritized against the main standard, and I'll work with Jesse and Roberto to make sure that everybody has really good visibility of that.
Excellent. And on personas, I'm seeing a question in the chat. Is there a persona for tech entrepreneurs?
No, but there could be. That's yeah, particularly if there's a bunch of them. Now, usually your tech entrepreneurs are trying to sell or build a product that is selling to one of these segments, and it's good for them to show up in the working group for that segment. So if you're an entrepreneur trying to sell to government or to medical personas or finance personas, you probably want to go and join a working group with the people who are actually going to buy your product as well, rather than have just a standalone one. However, maybe there's demand, certainly. Well, we know there's going to be demand for pod hosting services. That's something that's popped up in multiple different sectors now, that there needs to be quite a wide variety of different ways of hosting pods, not just the ODI community hosted ones and custom ones for particular implementation, but in general, imagine that lots of people in the world are going to have demand for a pod if we're successful at this over the next 12 months, and that might produce commercial opportunities for people, and entrepreneurs want to take advantage of that.
Excellent. I'm seeing a question from John H. Solid deployment within an enterprise boundary is simple, requiring no special business model. Solid deployment to allow an individual to transfer data between enterprises is more complex, and as far as I can see, will require a different business model. Is this correct, or is this simply too early to ask this
So,
question?
as a person who tried to apply Solid internally at a large enterprise, I would say it's even quite hard to explain what Solid is to start with. So, to get your engineering team assembled and focused on actually building an implementation, there isn't a useful website you can just point people to and say, look, everything you need is there, off you go. And that's one of the main barriers to adoption. So it might be that for enterprise contexts, it's just a training course that they need, or it's just a reference architecture, or it might be that they need a business model with, an active value creation framework or some kind of value delivery framework. We don't yet know. I've got one data point from my experience, but it's a very biased data point because I like adopting emerging technologies. That's kind of the person I am. There'll be other people who see it as a solution to a problem that they've got, and we really want to hear how they get on with adoption. Hopefully that's useful, John. And sorry for not seeing your question earlier. I can't see the questions up until now. So.
Christoph, your hands up.
Yeah, I also wanted to comment that on the business model aspect of sharing data between enterprises, that idea is broader than just Solid, right? So that goes the same for the other European initiatives like International Data Spaces, Catena X, and so on. So I'd say this is broader than just Solid, and Solid is compatible with those ideas as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Christoph. Another question for you, when I find the right chat. You are looking at the group's governance, and you noted an upcoming chair election for one of the 3 seats in December 2026. What are the W3C processes if people want to get involved in the group, perhaps as a chair, actual chair? What are the processes there in this coalition of the willing?
Sure. So maybe first to clarify what the role is of the chair, it's basically organizational, for the most part, organizing meetings, taking notes, meeting minutes, and so on. It's setting the agenda, what is on the topic, what topics are being discussed, but also finding consensus and mediating between different opinions in such groups. Ollie, I think you can talk long and loud about discussions in those groups and how it's not easy to find consensus among the group. So for then the process that revolves around the chairing is that currently in the Solid Community Group, we have adopted 2 years cycle for the chairs. So every 2 years, or when a chair is elected, they have a election period for 2 years, and then the chair is basically to be re-elected again, or a different chair to be chosen. So I would say then in that election, it's really about having the confidence of the community to act in the best interest of the group, prioritizing the group over personal or your employer's opinions. So I'm affiliated with Forschungszentrum Informatik, which is a research institute in Germany, which is kind of okay, I'd say, or good, I'd say, because I'm more of a neutral person. I don't have a political agenda. I don't need to sell any products. I can just do this for the sake of it, basically, and to push towards the common goal. And it's really up to the group, or to the community group, to decide whom they trust to present their interests.
Thank you so much, Christoph. Ollie, a CDMC question. You've got the kind of 14 key controls within CDMC. Some are very related to Solid. I think people here would like to hear especially about the usage control side of CDMC and how things like ODRL relate to CDMC in a similar way to how they relate to Solid.
Yeah, so CDMC, you can think of it as a set of business requirements for managing sensitive data. And we had one of the kind of thought leaders on ODRL help us with the entitlement section. So that was Ben Whittam-Smith, who's founded a company called Deontic Data that reads market data licenses and turns them into ODRL. But he helped us write that section of the specification so that you can express what people are allowed to do and not allowed to do in either policy or entitlement terms as part of the CDMC framework. And then if you're an organization that actually knows how to use ODRL and can integrate it into your entitlements platform, then you're good. If you've got some other entitlement solution, which lots of people do, then you're also still able to meet the criteria for CDMC. So it's CDMC is a good kind of proxy for the kinds of enterprise data management problems that need to be solved. And then there's a set of W3C standards related to Solid around ODRL. And we did collaborate, you'll remember, Jesse, last year with the data products group. So this is an OMG standard for data products called DPROD. It's an extension of DCAT and ODRL to be able to combine those two metadata standards together to adequately describe enterprise data products that are designed for sharing. But it's also helpful when we think about how you want to do content negotiation or content discovery on what's in your pod. So again, I think this will be a workflow that becomes very prevalent, that when your pod starts to have 50 different types of data in it from, all aspects of your life, lots of different domains, you'll not share all of it with everybody, hardly ever. Maybe your own personal Charlie AI agent has access to everything. But even then, I'm probably going to use like Claude for financial services. For the financial side, I'll use Gemini for my personal life because it's got access to my calendar. And I'll use, something else for a different aspect of my life. I'll be quite choosy with them. And those, then you're getting into kind of fine-grained entitlements requirements. And there's a load of prior art in the enterprise setting on managing very large entitlements domains and having a pleasant, manageable user experience for that. That again, we took experts from CDMC to do that. So being able to tap into these existing areas of experience and say, what we've really got is an entitlements management issue problem, there in that particular step in the workflow, even though it's part of a wider demo or it's part of a wider application, it'll help us to tap into those areas of expertise.
Amazing. And since it's a topic of interest to a lot of people in this group as well, cross-border data sharing, how is that handled within CDMC?
So there are a large number of rules and lots of data iron curtains knocking around in the world. So the EU and Russia and China and India and Korea, and the very large number of rules about what you can and can't do with citizens' data. And if you're a large organization operating in all of those countries, you need to know that you're not going to break the law. CDMC's approach to this was, well, we've just made it really easy for people to put a data set in the cloud and then hit the distribute everywhere button, because that's kind of one of the advantages of being able to spin up infrastructure quickly. But the data asset itself should report where it can and cannot go from a jurisdiction point of view. So you can imagine that in your catalog of the data that you've got in there, you might have a list of countries which you never want your data to go to, no matter what. And you might have a list of countries where the data should not leave. So I might say, my government information, when I go to my pod, I want it hosted in the UK, and I never want it to be hosted outside of the UK either. I really don't want my, tax records or my driver's license information or anything else shared with other governments, because I don't know what they're going to do with it. So I can put those restrictions on those types of data. And that's what CDMC says. You must have a capability to be able to tag the data with a list of jurisdictions that are never allowed to be in or never allowed to be out of. There are also some more complex rules around how data can move around, and where various jurisdictions that have bridges and data sharing arrangements with each other. So the EU and the UK, for example, have equivalency rules. It's possible to build those into a set of rules and policies that also apply in the data platform. And maybe that's something that enterprise pod providers will provide in the future. It's not something that comes natively with Solid, but it might be really important for kind of personal data traveling around the EU to know that it can go into this country and it can't go into that country.
Thank you so much, Ollie. A very thorough answer there. So much.
Sorry, it's my
no. Perfect.
Hit my button.
So we're coming towards the end. I do want to thank Christoph and Ollie very much for their presentations. It's been great to hear about the updates from the community group, And it's been wonderful to hear about CDMC. And Ollie, thank you for all the support on the Solid roadmap as well. It's been very, very helpful to the ODI and to all of the groups that we're supporting. Before we wrap up, I just want to give a reminder of some upcoming events, and I will share my screen to do that. So, from April 27th to the 1st of May, we are having a solid week. Block out your calendars. We've got a hackathon from April 27th to April 29th. We're going to be running a location in London. We're setting up remote nodes, so you don't necessarily have to fly in for that. And then on April 30th and May 1st, we're having a symposium in London. Tim's giving a keynote, Nigel Shabolt's giving a keynote, Oshani Servantine's giving a keynote, and we're going to have a range of great sessions and presentations and poster sessions, like the poster session that Christoph is organizing. So book your tickets. There's tickets for the symposium available. There's pre-registration for the hackathon available. And all of this is timed so that it's at the same time as this Solid 2026 release and launch that we are working towards. So during that week, you'll be hearing a lot about some of the packs that ODI is going to be putting together for different persona groups. You'll be seeing the parts of the spec that we're supporting and wrapping up and putting documentation around. So do get involved, do sign up now. And if you've got any questions, you can always email solid@theodi.org as well, and we can either field them or redirect you to the right people who can field them. So thank you so much for joining us in this month's Solid World. We're going to have a special Solid World next month as well in March. There you'll be hearing from people like Pierre-Antoine, who's been involved in Solid for a very, very long time. He's one of the W3C staff contacts for Solid and for the community group. He'll be presenting some of his research around research data and linguistics for Solid. And then the Solid World after that is going to be in April. And what we're going to be doing is presenting some parts of Solid World. We haven't finalized it yet, but you might either be getting a replay or a roundup of the Solid Symposium. So we look forward to seeing you all next month and in April. Have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. Fantastic rest of your day. Thank you so much. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.